Hey guys, how's it going? Today's a little bit of an end of an era. It breaks my heart a little bit, but we've done a lot of these videos during the pandemic. These are here to give you a little bit of time and encouragement to spend in the Word, just some things to think about. We're going to keep doing them during this pandemic, but this is the first one, and I've done a lot of these. This is the first one that's been inside. I'm at the office. There's just lots of graduation and ECA stuff going on. There's no place for me to get alone outside. So I'm going to do it inside today. But I've been thinking a bunch about time and kind of the time we spend with the Lord. And I found an interesting passage to think about it today. I'm going to look at Joshua chapter 6, the first few verses. This is the story of the fall of Jericho. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war, going around the city once. Thus shall you do for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, every one before them." Kind of a wild story, but the people of Israel have just entered the promised land, and right away, God puts a trial before them. And the trial is going to be there to teach them their need for God, their need for His grace, and their need for His glory. Because there's no way they're getting into this city. It is completely fortified. So God gives them instructions that strategically sound insane. You would not march once a day around a gigantic city and then 7 times on the 7th day blow some trumpets and see the wall fall. Israel had seen God do a lot of miracles, but they wouldn't probably have seen it in our sort of sight. Like when we read something like this, we have in mind a Bible full of God showing up with massive things. But Israel constantly forgot the things that God had done. And they didn't even have the rest of the story. This would have been very strange to them. So they start marching around the city. Now, this is where time comes in. It wasn't a small city. As they march around it once a day for 6 days, 7 times on the last day, that's a lot of time. They would have been marching, looking at this fortified, unbeatable, impenetrable city the entire time. What do you think was going through their head? I think what was going through their head was the need for God to show up. Maybe the insanity of the situation God had put them in. Maybe their total dependence on Him. And it was going to be a lot of time. We're talking hours and hours and hours and hours every day. And a whole bunch of hours on that special day. How does that reflect to our lives? I think I just heard in a sermon this morning, the need when you come to the gospel, we talk about preaching to the gospel to ourselves. But the idea was preach it to yourself in a certain passage of scripture. Read this over, chew on it, as I've talked about before, until you believe it. It requires a lot of time sometimes. But I think even of myself so often, I do a quiet time and I gain from it, but I don't give it a lot of time. How much more could I dive in or see God change my life if I was there until I began to really see the movement? What would have been going through Israel's head as they spent all this time looking at this city that was unbeatable? I think the main thing they would have been thinking about is, oh my gosh, I need God to show up. And we know in Jesus that we need God to show up. I've talked about it a lot, and He has. We have been moved from the domain of darkness into the kingdom of His precious Son, and everything we need to be made true is true there. As we face our trials, what are some of the things you think about? And how do they lead you to see the need for God? Think about it. Just put yourself in Israel's shoes. What are some of the things they would have been thinking about? And how can that translate to us and help us learn about how God shows up and how we need Him? So hopefully that was helpful today. Spend some time with Joshua. It's a crazy story. It's convicting to me because I don't give it often all the time I need to give it. But I'm going to be thinking about that today. I hope that's encouraging, and we'll see you again soon.